Good evening, everyone. We start today's meeting as usual with any other meeting. This will be live streamed to the public. Any exempt or private agenda items, the live stream will cease prior to the meeting moving into private. There will be a short delay. A recording of this meeting will be available on the council's website and on YouTube within 24 hours of the meeting. Would members and officers please remember to switch microphones on when speaking and speak directly into the microphone and switch off when finished. Officers joining via Teams, please use the hands up icon on your screen for questions and comments. Please turn your camera and microphone on when speaking and off when finished. Can everyone please ensure that all your mobile phones are switched off or put into silent? Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Gillian Fry, with M. Fry as sub-attending. Thank you.
Thank you. You have the minutes of the 17th of November meeting in front of you. Do we all approve? Thank you. Sorry? That long meeting, yes. Just a couple of chairs' announcements. The OSB meeting on the 16th of February will be combined with FRG members to hear a private item agenda regarding the airport. The ordinary items of the meeting will be moved to future meetings as appropriate. Some to the next meeting on the 9th of April. A revised work program will be sent to members by the Democratic Services Officer. Do we have any disclosures of interest for any of the items tonight? No, thank you. Do we have any other urgent business?
No urgent business, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
No references, Chair.
Thank you. We now move over to the LBC Corporate Performance Report, Q1 to 25-26. And I believe it's presented by Zanoon Haq. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. I'll just present on my screen. Just bear with me a second, please. Can everyone see that clearly?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, thank you. So I'll start by saying I think this is our first version of the new layout of the report that's been presented at this OSB meeting. So it looks slightly different to how it used to be presented before. So I'll just go through each slide and give you an overview. So the slide is... So the purpose of the Corporate Performance Report is to provide a transparent picture of how the Council is performing. The report includes both quarterly and annually service data. This document summarizes the report by providing an insight of how the Council are performing against the corporate plan, consistently doing well and consistently underperforming. Priority measures, corporate plan. So the following are the priority measures coming from our corporate plan, which are the number of households in temporary accommodation, job seeker claimant count percentage compared to national, percentage of overall customer satisfaction with customer services team, percentage of compliance with check-in requirements, number of children requiring statutory intervention, number of domestic abuse crimes reported, and GCSE results attainment 8. So number of households in temporary accommodation. There has been a reduction of 38 temporary accommodations from Q1 of 1,046 to 1,008 in Q2. There is a strong focus on preventing households from becoming homeless, which has resulted in fewer requests, as well as helping people move into private rented sector, and find your own home incentives have contributed towards the downward trajectory. Job seeker claimant count. Luton has had a very small decrease since last quarter from 7.5% to 7.3%. There are currently 10,915 claimants, significantly higher than stat neighbours and nationally. increase over the last 3 years from 5.2% at year end of 2022-2023 to 7.3% at 25-26. Overall customer satisfaction with customer service team. Customer satisfaction for quarter 2 25-26 has increased to 77.19%, representing a 9% improvement from quarter 1, and bringing the year-to-date position to 72.66% against the quarterly target of 80%. This improvement demonstrates early progress in stabilizing performance following the operational changes and high demand experienced in quarter 1. The uplift aligns with improved call handling, consistency, and the early impact of internal service alignment activity across customer services and director areas. It also reflects greater focus on first contact resolution, clear escalation routes, and increased use of data insight to identify and address failure demand. Compliance with check-in requirements. The quarter 2 25-26 figure is an increase of 6.75% from year-end 24-25. This latest figure represents a significant improvement and is much higher than the quarterly target of 20%. Number of children requiring statutory intervention. As of 1st October, there are 1,448 children with ongoing statutory intervention. There are further 214 receiving family support help and 415 care leavers. After a big jump during 24-25, this number has been steadily decreasing slightly again so far this year. Number of domestic abuse crimes reported. The number of domestic abuse crimes reported rose by 7.5% 2023-24 and 2024-25. The increase in police reporting is likely to be due to a great recognition and awareness of domestic abuse crime types and the support available for those affected. Levels of domestic abuse crimes are following a long-term slight upward trend, with a year-on-year increase of 6% and increases from quarter 1 to quarter 2 of 4%. Domestic abuse reporting practice has improved, together with the raised awareness levels of domestic abuse and the support available across our local partnership, resulting in increased willingness to report incidents. GCSE results. Attainment 8 is a total average grade over 8 academic subjects. The national average score is 45.9. Luton's average score is increasing and is now 45.7, in line with the national average. The next KPIs are those that we are in high performance, that are meeting or exceeding targets in the last 3 consecutive quarters. So Key Stage 4 Maths and English Level 5. The proportion of pupils gaining strong passes in both Maths and English is significantly higher than in 2019 and 2023, with Luton pupils performing above national in 2024. 45.6% of students achieved a strong pass in both Maths and English. Strong passes in both Maths and English provide students with access to A-levels as well as a wide range of career options. ITV customer satisfaction. The service has exceeded the target every month. Really strong results from quarter 2, considering Windows 11 rollout, and the service has deployed another circa 350 laptops as part of the refresh project. Percentage children achieving expected levels at Key Stage 2 reading, writing, and maths. These results reflect the continued success of Luton's primary schools, having improved their results from being stubbornly below national averages for the previous decades to above national in 2022 and maintaining the national average in 2023 and 2024. GCSE results, as mentioned earlier, we are in line with the national at 45.7. Number of new adults aged 18 to 64, those long-term support needs are met by admission to residential and nursing care homes. There have been 4 further long-term residential or nursing care admissions this quarter, which is exceeding the expected target. This measure is on target to overachieve if the current trend continues. Number of complaints about grass length. The figure for 2025 in quarters 1 and 2 are down on the same months, April to September in 2024. Weather conditions and the use of agency staff to fill the frontline grass cutting roles have contributed to keeping within target. Percentage of people who have their initial assessments completed within 28 days of referral. The service has seen continuous improvement with this metric over the last quarter. Performance clinics are in place to support timeliness of assessments and producing better outcomes for people. Availability of core network. The service network availability has been excellent, meaning Luton Council employees have an access to do their work and support our residents. The service hasn't failed on this metric since August 2023. Percentage of appeal decisions that are allowed as a percentage of all appeals decisions. National government monitors the quality of decision making in planning through appeal performance. It is measured by the percentage of planning decisions overturned at appeal, with a lower percentage suggestive of better quality decision making as less appeals are allowed. Government targets are currently a maximum of 10% of the authority's total number of decisions on applications being made during the assessment period being overturned at appeal. Number of households supported through the Household Support Fund. Target for 25-26 is 13,713 households. This is a lower target than that achieved in 24-25 as DWP treatment of the grant the previous year saw that HSF operate as two separate schemes. This means that households who receive support in both iterations of the scheme will have featured in the data multiple times. The target is also lower than 23-24 when single scheme was operated. This reflects that fact that overall government funding reduced from 3.6 million to 3.2 million. Percentage of apprenticeships levy spent. A leadership and management cohort has just started supporting internal upskilling apprenticeships, which should make a large impact on the spend. Individual, more ad hoc apprenticeships are also being recruited for, which should impact over the next 3 months. Percentage of online customers, public customer transactions completed. The service generated a high completion rate for online transaction. Normally anything above 80% is considered good, but the service are attempting to stretch the target above 90%. There is always going to be some failure in this metric, potentially due to users starting a form, getting distracted and forgetting to come back to it, internet issues, etc. Speed with making decisions on planning applications, categories within statutory period, major, minor, and other. The service are operating at 100% across all 3 planning application categories for determined applications within timescale. The planning service at Luton remains the best performing authority in the country, as it has been for the last 2 years. First time entrance to youth justice system percentage variance change. Luton continues to exceed its current target threshold and outperform all comparative groups. YPS has introduced its first youth prevention panel, part of a national initiative for formalized provision to at-risk young people. This is centered on support to young people not previously known to service seeking to establish additional pathways. Percentage of business rate council collected. The second quarter has shown improvement in the collection rate for NDR. The services are exceeding targets set for the quarter and year to date. Percentage of council tax council collected. The second quarter has shown improvement in the collection rate for the council tax. The services are exceeding targets set for the quarter and year to date. Scope 1 fleet fuel. Switching to biodiesel HVO has delivered significant savings with up to 90% reduction in life cycle greenhouse gas emission compared to conventional diesel. The following KPIs are those that need improvement and have fallen below target for the last 3 consecutive quarters. So number of households in temporary accommodation, as mentioned previously, there is a stronger focus on preventing households from becoming homeless, which has resulted in fewer requests for temporary accommodation placements. Percentage influenceable council spend through procurement spent locally. New procurement structure to include category management to ensure a more focused understanding and appropriate procurement approach to specified markets. This will include implementing and embedding the requirement of the new Procurement Act to remove barriers of SME, talking to and working with local SMEs to understand the current market better and how it might be in the future, engaging with the understanding of the market's feedback on the pros and cons to tendering for works with the council. Number of ombudsman's findings of fault. Housing senior management are now leading a comprehensive review of all current cases awaiting ombudsman. Determination to ensure confidence in the council's responses and that all required actions under our local authority and landlord responsibilities, policies and procedures have been met. The proactive review is designed to strengthen case quality, demonstrate learning and improve defensibility ahead of future findings. Acquisitions. There is an ongoing program to improve performance. Consistent high performing. The following measures are those that we are consistently performing very high. Speed with making decisions, percentage of appeal decisions that are allowed as to percentage of decisions, people who have their initial assessments completed, number of households supported through the Household Support Fund, online customer transactions completed, number of new adults aged 18 to 65 whose long-term support needs are met by admissions, number of complaints about grass, apprenticeship levy, children achieving expected levels of stage 2 reading, writing and maths, GCSE results, attainment for Key Stage 4 maths and English, IT customer satisfaction, availability of core network, first-time entrance to youth justice, business rate and council tax, and fleet fuel. I think we've gone through most of these, but this is just purposes of reading extra through that. These are the ones that are consistently in low performance, so number of households in a temporary accommodation, ombudsman finding of fault, and which of accusation, sorry, I'm losing my words here. Percentage of influenceable council spend through procurement spent locally. So I've gone through these in the previous slides, and the last slide is for corporate performance processes. So how we process our reporting. So the KPIs are agreed at the start of the reporting year. The KPIs will be reviewed on an annual basis, including the current targets. The indicators will also be reviewed when a new plan or strategy is created or when data sources become unavailable. This is to ensure that the report is always in line with the current performance and plans and that it remains up to date with outcomes that matter to local people. Senior management will agree any updates to the measures and members will be informed via this report. Service level reporting helps provide high level corporate data which informs council-wide decision making and benefits residents. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions?
Sorry, bear with me for 1 second. Okay, questions. Lee, Nigel, Anna, Steve, Tom. Any other questions? Matt. Okay, thank you. Lee, your question, please.
Thanks, Chair. My question is in relation to the child-friendly metrics that are now being tracked and those that seemingly are no longer being tracked. As Chair of Children's Services Review Group Scrutiny, I recall that we had an item to discuss the metrics on EHCPs and those the percentage of those issued within 20 weeks. We were given a assurance that that would be tracked in OSB, and I agreed with the OSB chair at that time, Councillor Wynne, that that would be tracked by OSB and hence wouldn't need to come to Children's Services Review Group. This is now completely missing from the report. In a previous report, the metrics for this were concerning, very low. The target was 90% and we were at 9.4%. So I'd just like to ask, why is that now absent? Are we suddenly achieving that 90% target? Why is it no longer there? Why are we no longer tracking it?
Got a colleague with a hand up online who will let come in. First thing is Katie, and I think we've got Paul as well. Katie, do you want to start off and I'll come in if
Hi, yes. So I think, as Zinu mentioned at the start of this document, we've spent a bit of time reviewing the measures that have been included within the report for corporate reporting. And also change the format of the reports that we've got in there. So I've made a note of the fact that we wanted to include that one in there, and I will take that one back for inclusion in future discussion around inclusion in future reports. I think what's happened is that because the reports have now changed and the measures have been reviewed, there has been some of those changes. But if it's a measure that's important, which it definitely is, then we'll make sure that's included in there. I think the other point to mention is that the summarised report that we're sending round it summarises the areas where we are consistently performing well and consistently performing poorly as well. So it's just summarising those areas, because I think you'll also be aware that we've got a number of different measures that are on those reports. There is an additional document which has been circulated, which we haven't run through this evening, which does include a number of different measures. So it doesn't mean necessarily that we aren't scrutinising or looking at the measures that are included in the presentation. It just means that we are drawing to attention those where we are consistently doing well or poorly. So there are additional measures in the additional report as well that can be reviewed, there's a wider selection of measures in there too.
So you're gonna have to bear with me because I can't actually read the writing.
I think it's Paul Wagstaff, yeah.
Paul. Okay, Paul, do you want to come in?
Yeah, Paul Wagstaff, Director of Education. And I hear what you're saying, Councillor Bridgen, and it has been an issue in the past in terms of the completion rates. But just to give some assurance, running to date over the course of the year, it's now up to 61.9%, with the November figures as being 87.5% completed. So it's certainly turned round. And I think that's because we've cleared the backlog. The council invested in additional capacity. So we are fairly confident that this will continue to increase over the course of the year. But I agree that, Katie, it might be something that we want to make sure is covered until the board is satisfied that we've actually got over the glitch that we had last year.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And yeah, I mean that's really good progress, and it's something that certainly I'd like to see as well. To you know, that's a real positive that we've got up to 64. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. My question is in relation to the job seeker claimant count. Just to give a bit of context, I've worked in the recruitment industry for 30 years, 10 of which have been in Luton, directly for local businesses and running my own business. And I've always observed that our job seeker claimant count has been well above the national average for a very, very long period of time, unfortunately. So I was keen to get an understanding of what seems, in my opinion, to sort of drive that higher level performance as opposed to performing towards the national average or the local sort of stat neighbour average, because that seems to be something which is fairly consistent and has been consistent for a number of years. Thank you.
I was taking the answer.
Katie or Zanun, is that something you can comment on? I appreciate we've got a selection of colleagues here tonight. I should have said, and just for the record, how we've worked previously in this committee is that we've tried to make it worthwhile in terms of having the right exchange with members, try to answer questions in the right way. So in order to enable that to happen, we've asked for pre-questions from members to enable us to go away, bring the right officers into the room, make sure that we answer the questions satisfactorily and there's to a certain level of quality. I don't think we've got any questions back this time, so there may be a few that aren't answerable on the evening because we've got colleagues here from education, Paul, we've got housing, we've got a few of us that can try and broadly answer some other ones, but I think that one, unless someone puts their hand up, might be one we might take away. So News put his hand up.
Yeah, hi there. Yeah, I totally agree. I think we'll take this away and take it back to the service to get an answer to it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My first question is, I'm a little confused by the importance of the number of complaints about grass length and why that's come up as a major item. There would seem to be other things that
Pretty sure we won't. Katie, go on.
Yeah, so when we went through the review of the document, which included the review of the measures that were included in there, we worked with the services to highlight the measures that they felt were most representative of the work that they were doing at the moment. So that was a decision that was made and put forward by services for what they felt were best reflected their contribution to the 2040 and the corporate measures.
Mr. Chair, I would actually suggest that we go back and look at that one again. I think there are other important criteria, which would be, I think if members of the public look at this and see grass cutting compared to some of the other issues that are affecting the town, they might start to wonder what we're talking about. That's my first question.
Sorry, Steve, just add more to come in there.
Oh, sorry.
I think it's a really fair point, and I think it's probably fair to say this is the first time these measures have come to a meeting, so there might be a bit of chopping and changing in the dialogue. Obviously, there would have been portfolio holder involvement where applicable as well. So any feedback that comes back to us in terms of what measures we may want to tweak going forward is welcome. So we can take that back to the service. Thank you.
The second area, Chair, is I'm wondering why the health of Luton's population isn't being looked at as being important criteria. So if we look at page 39, there's a whole series of issues there. For example, HIV late diagnosis, new birth visits done in the first 14 days, looking at the health of the teeth of our population, looking at, and there's something that's missing there. We used to be looking at data on childhood obesity. That's not in there. So why are we not looking at and providing information back on the important areas of the health of our town's population as part of the things that we should be monitoring?
So in terms of the measures that are in there, so as we've outlined in the report, so the presentation outlines the areas where we're consistently doing well or we're consistently doing poorly. We also do provide, as part of the pack, a number of the measures that aren't reported on in the presentation. So we are still reporting on them. They're still in the appendix that go alongside this report. It's just that they haven't been highlighted because they're not consistently we're not consistently performing well or poorly. So we've highlighted and summarised those within the presentation, but they are still being reported on and they're still within that pack. In terms of the childhood obesity, I think just referring to the previous example in terms of the grass cutting, we have reviewed a number of these measures and it would have been removed as it probably would have been one of the measures that was seen as the other measures were included because they felt more important. But again, we can take that back to the service and review because I think we are getting some feedback on some of these measures and want to make sure that we are definitely reporting on the things that matter most.
Thank you. But I would recommend that the health of the town are some of the important criteria to show how well we're doing or not well doing. So I would certainly, as a member, welcome to see something on those particular areas to show how we are doing, what we're hoping to do, and how we compare nationally with the average. My final thing is, sorry, do you have any things to say before I go on to the last one? No. My last point is to say congratulations with regard to what's happening on the apprenticeship levy. The only thing I would say, and I've said on a number of meetings, I don't think what we do within the council, as far as it's important, it's not what only happens within the town. I really think, especially with the numbers of job seekers being consistently high, we should be looking at things like apprenticeships being offered around the town and what we could be doing working with our partners in the town, in the businesses, with the education facilities to ensure that we're capturing the whole data, because I think we are only getting part of the picture here. That's within the council, it's important, but what's more important is what's happening within the town and how we're helping young people to get onto the careers ladder. And I would recommend going forward that we pick up that data, please.
We can review that, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I'm a bit confused on the household support fund because in the report it says that we're lowering the target figure for where we've had couples, but also where we've had the single budget for the household support fund. Why are we lowering the figure when the government is making more money available? Surely we should be making that figure higher so we can get to more people. That's the first question.
Katie, or do you want to come back on that one?
Nick is
Nick?
So, in terms of the actual process for the household support fund, that's going to have to be answered by the service, I'm afraid, in terms of the reasoning behind why we are increasing or not increasing. We provided the performance information, but services will need to provide that, so we can take that back to the services for an answer on that.
I think we need a report. I mean, to me, it seems a bit stupid that we lower the target on the household support fund when we got more people through claiming benefits. What will be qualifying for the household support fund? So that's the first one. The second one is on the youth panel, what's been set up by Youth Justice. Where did they get them members of the youth panel from? Were any of them recruited from ACE or Connections, which are the kids what are normally outside the normal circle of recruitment for the nice children on the nice panels in Luton? Why did we go to ACE and did we go to Connections to get some of the hard to reach kids to come onto that panel?
Paul, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I don't oversee that particular piece of work, but I do know that the panel has a broad range of children on there, including children who are in care, those who are actually vulnerable, and also children with SEND. So I do know that the Youth Partnership Service have looked at trying to ensure that it is a broad section representing youth, and it's not just from a smaller range of very academic, well-versed students. But I can certainly find that out for you, more detail around whether they did contact ACE or those from other groups as well. But I'll find it out for you, Councillor Shaw. Yeah.
If you let me know, that'd be handy.
And
the last one is, I've just got to say, we talk about the grass cutting, but the grass cutting is very important to thousands of people in this town every weekend, what pay £50 to play on a football pitch. And that football pitch should be at a standard they can play on. And at the moment in Luton, there's probably 1,500, 2,000 every weekend playing football and paying a lot of money to play on those pitches. So we've got to deliver a standard what's good enough for them to play on. And by the way, we've got some of the best Sunday league teams in the country, in the town. So let's support them a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
Thank you. This is a very interesting report and it's well received. A few presentation of issues maybe I can discuss with you afterwards. I'm just a little concerned at the low percentage rates.
Matt, can you turn your mic towards you a bit?
Is that better?
Yeah, that should be okay.
All right, okay. I'm just a little concerned about the low collection rates for business rates and council tax collection, and just wondering what's behind those figures.
I think we're probably going to have to come back on that. Apologies. I know we'd rather be able to answer questions tonight. as per mentioned earlier on, I think we need to sharpen up going forward so we've got the right officers around the table. So if we can get into that process of getting the report out, trying to get some of these questions, we will make sure we've got the right table then.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Aslam?
Chair, the report looks at attainment levels and has a focus on young people, but we do have skills gap and also education with adults. What the report doesn't cover, how we're doing to empowering adults and getting them into employment. And I also want to see connect to Luton. We've invested a lot in that agency. Would like to see how many people they've been able to get into employment of late. And the other thing is about procurement. You know, we've had a lot of discussions around it. The report doesn't even highlight anything about whether we made any improvements, whether we have. I know there has been engagement exercise, but we haven't had any update to whether there has been any improvement in terms of accessibility of local people providing those local services, because we, as Luton Borough Council, did make a commitment that we're going to make it much more easier. We're going to be working with them. We're going to be, empowering them. And in this report, there's no mention of that.
Probably same as, yeah, I'm assuming the economic growth strategy came here at some point as well, which I'm assuming, which would have had a lot of that information in Aslam. But let's go away, take it, ask the question. If there's a particular report you need and you'd like, obviously that's a different matter. Because it sounds that's quite a broad question. There's quite a few parts in there, so around employability particularly. So again, that's probably a separate item to performance. Or alternatively, if there is a particular area you'd like us to drill deeper into for the performance report as a theme, if that's more helpful, we can do that as well. So rather than saying, right, we want to answer a broad range of questions on, children's, to education, to health, to whatever, we could say, actually, we're really interested the next time around the employment theme, economic growth, so on and so forth, and we can make sure that we try and drill down into that a bit more. So it's less of a broader conversation, more of a sort of deeper dive, if that's helpful for you.
Yeah, what I'm trying to get at is, look, there are a lot of people losing jobs, and we already had high unemployment figures, right? What we want to understand is that, first of all, we're doing our level best to create opportunities. And if there are no opportunities for them, I mean, particularly we start from here within Luton Borough Council, because we know that there has been barriers in the past for people to, getting onto the procurement ladder. That's number one. Secondly, we've spent a lot of money and time on courses, upskilling adults, and then spending money on agency, which was supposed to get them into employment. We want to know how that fits in with the corporate plan, right? So I just want to know how well we're doing on that.
We can make those amendments and draw that out more clearly for next time, I think. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Begum?
Thank you, Chair. I do have one question, and I'm aware that maybe officers aren't available to answer the question, so I'm happy for you to take this back. It was regards to the IT customer satisfaction. Since we've come in-house, has there been an increase in customer satisfaction? Because from my point of view, I can't see there being any customer satisfaction. I myself have had challenges, to say the least, with IT, where just a simple thing like arranging a time to pick up your device again has proven to be difficult. So in terms of customer satisfaction, what I'm interested in is whether there is a way that you guys can sort of capture not just the public data, i.e. in terms of people accessing our services externally and what their experiences are, but also internally for us councillors. It'd be interesting to see how many of our councillors are able to adequately access IT services and get the support that they need, whether it means just updating laptops or picking up, dropping off and things like that. So I can see that it seems like there is overall satisfaction. I'd like to look at the numbers a bit closer in terms of breakdown.
Yeah, absolutely understand that. Probably two parts to that, as you know, external facing and internal facing. We can speak to the director, DDAT around that. I know that I know because it's in our service area, there's a huge amount of work going on to rebuild the foundations of the council in terms of IT. That's not a super quick fix, so it will take time. But you know, the confidence level we will get there over time compared to when we had the outsource, which was far more challenging in lots of different ways. So, but I'll speak to the director of IT and we'll come back around that question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to reiterate what Adam said earlier on, because obviously Councillor Aslam, you were not present at the time. When we do these performance reports, when the agenda comes out, everyone's afforded the opportunity to put questions in beforehand. So as you can see, a lot of the questions that have been asked today have had to be taken away, just to be answered by the department. So if we have the questions beforehand, then those departments can be asked to be present in this meeting and therefore answer the questions. Maybe in the future, something a week prior to the meeting, we can put another reminder out just to remind members for any questions. Would that be possible?
That's possible, Chair, but on this occasion, the report was sent out to members 4 weeks before the date of the meeting, which is today. So there was ample time for members to have responded to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? Tom, do you want to comment?
Yeah, it's just what Councillor Aslam said. I agree with him an awful lot. About 4 or 5 weeks before Christmas, me and Javier, who's got the portfolio holder for training and that adult training, met 3 of the biggest construction companies in Luton. And they were very blunt and honest with us because each one of them employed apprentices of all different levels, from trade all the way through to surveying and everything else. But what they said to us is, through your procurement process, unless we can get a continuation of work in the area, how do you expect us to put £500,000 a year into the training centre? Which to me made an awful lot of sense. And is it time for us to have a look at grown-up procurement and have a full report back here to see how procurement can be tied into the training opportunities what are with a lot of those companies? And saying there were two of them are absolutely massive, but every council up and down the country is saying to them, you're operating in our area, we want you to supply some apprentices. Our view was, will you spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands on setting up a proper training college in the town, or support a proper training college? And that's what came back. It said, your procurement would stop us doing that because you insist on going out for open tenders through procurement. You go out for open tenders, anyone can win it, and we'd be £500,000 out of our pocket to pay for that training for the next year, even though we're not getting any work. So is it time we looked at procurement as a committee and decide and look to see if there's a better way forward to get the training done, what we'd all like to see in the town for all the people who are unemployed? Just asking a question.
Are you recommending that we have a agenda item in the future based on the procurement? Okay, thank you. We'll note that down. Lee?
Thanks, Chair. Mine is more of a comment than a question. Just in relation to the KPI on number of ombudsman findings of fault, this is being reported as a percentage, but unless I'm missing it, I can't see an actual number. And one of the issues I have with percentages is if you've got percentages of small numbers, it can really skew the targets. And so either the target is 60% and we're at 100%, but it might just be there's one case, who knows. So my request would it be possible to have the actual numbers as well that percentage is based on? Thank you.
I think Adam said yes to that one. So Katie, do you want to comment?
Nodding also. I think the answer is
Yeah.
yes, Katie. Yeah.
I'm making a note of all of the comments we're getting about the measures that are in there, and we'll take those back and look at those.
Thanks, Franz.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just a brief comment on the judgment of our council's planning department. If you're basing the judgment on the percentage of appeals that are allowed, then you need to understand that in many cases, this is appeals against enforcement action the planning department is taking, where someone has put in a planning application, received a consent, and then built something different. That happens much more frequently than you may realise. And the government will say, of course, that they're taking a pragmatic view because the unauthorised development has already been built. Well, it may be a pragmatic view from the government's point of view, but frankly, from my point of view, it's encouraging people to build things that they haven't got approval for. And that frequently means that you get developments which are a good deal less quality than they jolly well should be. So let's not be too quick to criticise the planning department on the grounds of the percentage of appeals that are allowed. It's a very misleading judgment.
Okay, thank you. If there's no more comments, we will move over to the recommendation. So the recommendation is for SB to note and agree the current and future developments to the corporate performance report and associated action. I believe Katie's got quite a lot of notes to go back on in terms of the development requests that we've already made. So I'm quite happy to know if everyone else is happy as well. Okay, thank you very much. We now move over. Well, thank you to Katie and Adam, your team, for putting the report together. It is the first one in this new format, so I'm sure, I mean, there was always going to be some sort of development to go ahead. Thank you very much. We now move over to the second agenda item, protecting vehicle access to electrical vehicle charging points. That's being presented by Anthony Swift.
Thank you, Chair. And just to introduce myself, Anthony Swift, Head of Transport Services, and I'm joined by Nathan Bird, Senior Transport Planner, who's been leading on a range of different EV charging projects. This report provides an overview of the local electric vehicle infrastructure project, otherwise known as LEVI, and the recommendation by officers to protect access to EV charge points. Just for background, following the adoption of the Council's EV strategy, the Council has been awarded 1.2 million LEVI funding from the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles in 2024. The funding will enable the Council to work with a charge point operator to install over 300 charge points on street in residential areas. This will significantly increase the number of close to home charge points for residents without access to off-street parking. The charge point operator will be procured by way of a 15-year concession contract, requiring the charge point operator to provide most of the investment to install, operate and maintain the charge points. Each proposed charge point location will have 2 electric vehicle charging sockets, requiring 1 parking bay per socket. Maps of the proposed locations can be found at Appendix 1 and 2 of this paper. To ensure these bays are available for EV charging, the Council will need to adopt an appropriate approach. Officers are consequently recommending to adopt an approach that will see traffic regulation orders impose EV charging only restrictions at all EV bays, and this would set clear messaging from day one of charge point installation and provide greater confidence in the charge point network. The traffic regulation order would restrict parking to EV charging only and reflect any existing restrictions such as controlled parking zones. This approach is used by the majority of councils, with a few exceptions, and Luton Council has placed traffic regulation orders on the existing on-street charging
infrastructure, which restricts parking for EV charging only. And I'm very happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, let me just take the names down for questions first. Councillor Aslam. Anybody else? Matt. Lee. Okay. Councillor Taylor. Anybody else? Steve. Okay. Councillor Aslam.
You share. Well, I'm a electric car user, and I understand the challenges that all the motorists who are driving electrical cars are facing, and so having more charging points is certainly welcome. But one of the things that I'm noticing is the variation in pricing. For example, the supercharger at Tesla is much more affordable and lower than some of the others, and they are almost double and triple in prices. And I'm hoping that with these charging points, they will be some kind of regulation around pricing. And, I want to understand, first of all, are they going to be open for tenders? Who's going to be sort of managing those? Or is there Luton Borough Council who's be sort of, installing them and getting that revenue? And at what price are we going in at? And the second biggest problem is obviously because there's fewer charging points, there are often so many queues and people end up fighting one another. And so if you're going to locate them in busy streets when there's a queue of cars, that's going to create traffic issues. And secondly, potential, again, people fighting over these. If they're too spread out, that's a problem. And if they're too close to one another, that's a problem. So I think we need to have them in practical places. Car parks is an ideal, open car parks when they're not used. The one in Gypsy Lane works really well. Similarly, we've got so many different car parks in the town, including supermarkets and so forth. So I really need to understand how you're going to map them out, how are you going to price them, and is there going to be our highways going to be, looking at about traffic challenges as well.
Thanks, Councillor. It should be noted that the scope of this funding, this grant funding, is specifically for on-street charging, generally slow or fast charging. So that doesn't prevent other charging infrastructure to come forward in car parks, hub-style charging delivered by the private sector. This is government funding specific for those residential areas that otherwise can't charge because they don't have access to off-street charging. Clearly, we want to be able to ensure that there is fair and transparent pricing, especially since we are tendering this opportunity, and therefore we are looking to work with a single partner. So on the the first question about pricing and how that's regulated, if I could just hand to my colleague Nathan.
Thank you. The pricing of public charge points is a concern for all EV drivers. That's quite simply the case. Within the tender we're doing for Levi for on-street charging, we have put in a price control mechanism where we cap the price relative to the cost of energy. So it restricts how much the operator could inflate the price above their overheads, and therefore we can control competition through that. The other thing we've done to try and bring some more price parity between people being able to charge at home and people reliant on public networks is we require the charge point operator to offer off-peak charging, so overnight charging. And that's where these charge points really become beneficial to residents. They enable people to charge close to home overnight when they're not using their vehicle on those slower, lower powered charge points, which are more cost effective, both in terms of the equipment purchasing and the tariff that the end user, the EV driver, pays.
There was just one other point I wanted to add before perhaps you wanted to respond with any follow-up questions, which was, I think there was a question in there about revenue possibly. And just to make it clear that the council, as part of its procurement, will be seeking a revenue share from the charge point operator. So any proposal coming forward as part of this tender will have to respond to that question, and it will be scored accordingly.
Terms of mapping out, how closely will highways be involved, and also looking at, where they will be placed. You obviously want a fair spread to give everyone the chance, but at the same time, not in areas where it's going to create a lot of traffic issues.
That is something that we've been very aware of throughout this project, is ensuring that the locations selected for charge points don't create issues in themselves. We have been consulting with highways through this project, including working with Mark Barnett, who's been part of the tendering process as well. So the initial site surveys that we've done, we've looked at identifying areas where there is the need for on-street charging, i.e. areas where there is no off-street parking for residents, so no private driveways. We've looked at pavement widths, road function, so the speed of roads, other amenities in the area. These things have all been considered when we've identified the potential sites. Once we have a charge point operator appointed to this contract, they will then carry out further investigations to confirm those sites. And then there's another step where we'll carry out consultation to ensure that we get local buy-in as well. So we are considering how these fit into the network, the road network, as well as how they fit in with residents.
One more thing, you talked about off-peak, benefiting from off-peak charging. So for central areas, for example, some of those roads, most of the people, when they come back, there is even hardly any space, even people park around the corners. And it'd be interesting to see, how these will be located and where, and, because you want everyone to benefit. People are now buying electric cars, no matter where they live. But at night, if there isn't a place to put them, how are they going to benefit from?
We recognise it's a challenge. There's a finite amount of road network, finite amount of footway space, and that's why we've gone through this process to look at the most viable and feasible options. There will be an element of delivering in the first year of the contract a priority number of charge points. But as Nathan says, this is a challenging area of policy because of certain constraints that we are going to have to work through. But we do expect, with the research that we've done through that work with highways and through monitoring, that we will end up with charge points that are in the right locations, well utilised, but don't have an adverse impact in that sense. But we take your point. It's a challenging policy area.
Okay, Matt.
Yes. First question is around the network, the electricity network. Has that been stress tested for this, especially with the obviously the growth of EVs?
The very short answer is yes. We've worked with UKPN, the distribution network operator for the area, to identify the number of charge points that we can connect into different areas. All of the areas that we have proposed a charge point for, we've worked with UKPN to identify whether or not there is available power to put a charge point there, and all of the locations have been confirmed. And on top of that, because of this developing area, UKPN have developed a EV tool to help authorities locate the best places for charge points. So that's another thing that's fed into our site selection tools.
Okay. And just additional questions, if you don't mind, Chair. Point 25, you mentioned that there's going to be no restrictions on the maximum stay. Does that not give you an opportunity for people to just use the EV place spaces as personal parking space?
Yes, that is a risk. However, the charge point operator themselves have a mechanism to manage that, where they can charge overstay fees, what are referred to as overstay fees. This system works by once a vehicle has completed charging, after a set period, that driver will start incurring costs in addition to the energy costs that they would have been paying, which encourages them then to move their vehicle off of that bay.
Thank you.
Lee?
Thanks, Chair. As someone who is reliant on off-street parking and hence I've not been able to convert over to EVs just yet, I certainly welcome this. Although I'd like to see obviously a few more charging points in my ward in Vauxhall a bit sooner. But I think my question is around: are there any options available to empower people in my situation to put their own charging points in? To give an example, I think I saw that some authorities allow the installation of like a channel that the cable can go into so it's not a trip hazard.
Yes, so there is another project that we're investigating at the moment beside this one, which will involve the installation of what's referred to as cross-pavement channels, which, like you say, enables the user to run a cable beneath the surface of the pavement. We're currently working with procurement on a pilot scheme following the announcement, and in fact the award of some funding from the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles for this pilot.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. I support this. I think it's a step in the right direction. And I've also seen going around lots of private houses have already installed. If you've got a driveway, you go down up, for example, Old Bedford Road, you see them got their own charging points. The only thing that I find probably discriminating against anybody who wishes to have an electric vehicle is the council housing stock. You've got a lot of low-rise, high-rise. For example, Parktown, the high-rise. How on earth, if you really want to be environmentally friendly and buy an electric car, you're going to need a hell of a long lead if you live on the 14th floor of Heswell Court. So maybe it's not relevant to you, but I think the council-owned property, the council have been very, very slow and probably backwards in developing electric technology for their residents to use.
We have some good news on that front. We have been working with a supplier, Believe, who will be installing charge points at 6 council-owned locations, including Parktown. We expect those charge points to be going in by the end of February, and so council housing residents will start to see the benefits of EVs. Just as an addition, for properties that aren't owned by the council, there are options for landlords of privately owned flats as well. That there are quite sizable grants available for installing both EV infrastructure and charge points themselves. So charge point management systems and things like that can be installed.
One needs an eco-vault to do that.
So there is quite a wide range of funding available for the private sector who are owning these properties as well to invest and develop significant infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I do support the recommendation. the approach to. The only thing I would say, actually, Councillor Khan picked it up quite rightly. I think if there is an expectation when we put in a TRO, that because that is a time limit, the TRO actually normally stops at around 6 o'clock. When would be the time, I suppose, that people would have take advantage of the cheaper electricity? But that's going to be the time when the TRO is not in place and people are just going to go into those places if it's in an area where there's a shortage of parking spaces. I think that's the only thing that's really against that recommendation, and I don't really see a solution around it, going forward. My second point, I suppose, Jonathan, it would have been probably better if we had drawn together the three things that are coming up today. That is what's happening around the housing estates. That information is out there. Why isn't it in this report? If I'm honest, it's not a major question, because and also the point that you raised, that I asked you actually earlier, Jonathan, which has been picked up by Lee here, about the cross pavement parking. It makes more sense to us to have the whole picture, and perhaps it would have been better. Would have answered quite a few of the questions rather than having to be picked up if it had been in the report. That's well done for what's going forward, but I think it might be more helpful to have coordinated it in that way.
Thank you for that feedback. With regards to the TRO, you raise a very good point. There would be we could look at suspending different parts of it within time period. So you could maintain the EV charging only part 24/7, but where it's in a CPZ controlled parking zone, that part may end at the standard time that all the area CPZ does end. So yes, we would be looking at methods to make sure that the actual EV charging only part is protected, because we're aware that parking becomes more of a challenge the later it gets into the evening. And we do want people to be able to park in those bays overnight to enable them to use that off-peak charging.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Begum.
Thank you. Just got two questions. Firstly, for example, it kind of crosses over with some of the questions that have already been asked. I'm interested in sort of like, how are you going to manage it? For example, if there is, say, on a particular street where there isn't any sort of off-road parking facility available, say, for example, Beach Road in Berry Park. It's very congested. It's very busy. Obviously, it leads onto the main road. If you've got somebody who has a disabled bay, or you might have on that street, somebody with disabilities and needs to access that disabled bay, where exactly are you going to locate? Are you going to look at those sorts of things before you locate the EV charging point, for example, because you don't want to be causing an obstruction for somebody that perhaps needs, I don't know, ambulance to come and pick them up for whatever appointments that they go to in terms of the sort of services that are available on the NHS. And you don't want to be blocking access for those people when they need access to the front doors. And some of these roads are so tight and situated in such a way that turning at the end of the road is not always an option, and they're always already congested. And if you do have the option of charging for overstay, for example, some people aren't really that bothered about the overstay charges. The way they see it is that's a parking spot and that's gold dust. So how is that sort of aspect going to be managed? So that's my first question.
Okay, in terms of the disabled bay, so far we haven't specified any locations that would incorporate a disabled bay. However, we do expect that will happen along our journey, as this will be a 5-year install program. It's a lot of charge points being installed. In terms of the TRO, we don't anticipate impacting that TRO for a disabled bay with a charging with the charge point. We may add charging only to it, but it will still be a disabled bay. The reason for that is Motability, who provide the vehicles for people with disability, are transitioning their entire fleet to electric. So it's likely that disabled users are going to lead the way in the EV transition anyway. So facilitating them is quite important. Additionally, we've considered the PAS 1899 guidance, which is the accessibility guidance for charging bays within our tendering process, setting standards that we need the charge point operator to meet in order to make sure everybody can use and access these charge points. With the overstay fees, where people do just decide, well, I'm just going to suffer the cost, we can still, with a TRO in place that says EV charging only, if that vehicle isn't charging, it can be dealt with under the TRO by parking enforcement. So there is an option there to add greater penalties. And if we have problematic areas, I would expect our parking enforcement team would be able to target those.
Thank you. My second question is on Appendix 1 on page 58, where you've got your priority list. I just wanted to know kind of like, is this what we're expecting in terms of where the charging points are going to be? Because some of the areas, it looks like charging points are really scarce. So you could have, I don't know, a number of people wanting to charge. I don't think people are going to be happy about having to come and go. Because the other day myself, I've got an electric car. I nearly got stuck on Crawley Road car park. If I hadn't turned back, gone home to charge it, because that was the quickest way to do it. But obviously I've got charging point at home. But if I don't have that facility at home and I need to charge quickly and I'm having to go around because it's already plugged into somebody's car, someone's already charging, I could really be absolutely dead on the car and no way of moving. So is this what it's going to look like? Because if it is, then I don't know, is there consideration of perhaps inviting other providers to add in a few more, or?
So the priority list that is shown on Appendix 1, those are the sites that we identified as potential opportunities for EV charging that aligned with the resident requests that we've received. So to the point that where we opened our tendering, resident requests ended up in the priority list, along with the others where we saw the greatest opportunity. So we've made up a number of charge points where we basically have said, this is your starting point to the new operator. We expect them to install more than this in the first year. And this is just the starting point. Appendix 2 shows the long list, the rest of the 245 sites that we've identified. And you can see that that is a much better coverage across the town. So we're targeting those people who have already come to us and said, hey, we want a charge point. Essentially, it is the quick wins, but we know there's a market there. And then we're going to start filling in the gaps as we go through. Of course, we're still receiving requests, and these requests will be passed on to the new charge point operator, and that will impact on what order charge points are installed. Plus, charge point operators have developed a lot of knowledge on the best places to install these charge points. But it's also worth remembering that these are on-street charge points that are really designed for the resident to use rather than the destination charger. There is scope within the contract to install some rapids, but we will need to work with the operator to identify the best locations for those. They have the expert knowledge.
Thank you.
Nigel?
Thank you, Chair. I really welcome this. I think it's a fantastic initiative, and I quite agree it's going to be a devil probably to implement. But speaking purely parochially from Stopsley, we've recently been through a parking consultation for all of the residents, which was a massive exercise in itself, supported by many of the local residents. And we are not going to see anything until the end of February in terms of a draft that can be responded back to residents. I've been informed by the officer, and I appreciate there's a lot of work involved from that perspective. I'm really interested to understand what your consultation process is going to be and how that's going to be conducted. Mindful of consultations I've observed over the last sort of couple of years, take-up rates can be incredibly low from that perspective. So I'm not assuming anything. Is it going to be a residents' consultation? What's the process going to be, and what are your timeframes? Because you've got 2026 to 2031. It's not a long period of time to consult residents in each ward as you roll it all out. Thank you.
I think that's a really good question. We, as officers, we need to try and balance expediting the need for charge points versus genuine consultation about, are there likely to be any adverse impacts behind putting these charge points in at said locations? We plan to work in partnership with the charge point operator to do this consultation. And one of the things we're working through internally at the moment is what is the most effective way to do that. So we haven't quite yet nailed down that process. It's still something we're discussing with. We are moving to the second stage of the tender. So we are going to have to start to lock down now what that looks like. And we do expect to work with the charge point operator as part of that consultation process. So if that's something I'm able to take away and work with officers on about how that exactly looks, the mechanism of that, that would be something I'd prefer to do.
Can I just sort of follow up on that? I mean, putting something on the Luton Borough Council website is not going to serve the purpose. I'm not suggesting that's the way that you're going to be looking at it. But again, these are purely sort of provision. If I look at some of the areas where are suggested in Stopsley or 500 metres of the indicated location, like most wards in the town, you can struggle to park your car at night when you come home after a day's work. I know you're aware of all this, but in terms of the consultation, can it be a consultation as opposed to something on the website and getting 15 people to respond? I'm not being cynical, but that's what's happened previously. Thank you.
Just to reassure members, that is absolutely the spirit in which we'll be consulting. We need, as officers, and the charge point operator needs to ensure that we bring this into land really smoothly with residents. That way they are going to be well utilised, which is attractive to the charge point operator, and it will be less disruptive for us as officers. Obviously, a traffic regulation order in itself has to go through a statutory process of consultation, but I can say for sure our consultation process for these sites will not simply involve purely a web page. We do have a web page already set up to promote things like the grants that have already been referred to, where we are on this journey, our adopted EV strategy. But we do expect it to be more around specific letter drops and that type of consultation, rather than something more strategic that could get the detail of which would get lost until at such point the charge points are in, and that is not what we as officers are looking to do.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. It's just maybe I've missed something, but it was to do with disabled bays and electric charging bays. If you're disabled with an electric car, you can't really use your disabled bay. You've got to go and look for a charging bay. Okay, how does it work?
While we haven't identified any disabled bays for installing charge points in at this stage, in our surveying, we did actually note where those bays are in relation to the 245 sites that we have proposed. As we progress on this journey, we are expecting to install some charge points within those bays. Because, like I said, we know that there is going to be demand for that. The bays themselves, all of the bays will have some degree of accessibility consideration. We will aim for a gold standard, but as we've been discussing, some of the roads are too constrained to be able to put 2.5 meter wide parking bay in for a fully accessible experience. So there will be some compromises that need to be made, but we will do our best to ensure that everybody can access these charge points.
You need to actually bring the system in first before you work out what the problems are. Because if somebody can't use a disabled bay, that's a space being taken up on very congested streets that we've got. So I hope we can find solutions for all this and
come back on it.
I think we note the point, and that's something that we'll very much consider as part of any infrastructure provision that goes in around either in or nearby to disabled parking bays.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other comments or questions before we move on?
Chair, if I may, I just wanted to make one point, which this has been really helpful as officers to have these questions. And whilst there may be an element of disruption, inevitably when you're creating this type of change through traffic regulation orders, and we will absolutely look to plan and monitor that the best we can, it may well be that through advancements in technology more generally around EV charging, that demand, i.e. the situation whereby there is a huge pull towards a charge point which has a negative consequence. It may well be that as we see improvements right across the board in terms of EV charging provision, on street, destination charging at service stations, workplace charging, destination charging, and other types of charging that come forward, actually this may be more manageable than first anticipated because of those developments. For example, we do expect charging speeds to increase, therefore the time needed to charge to decrease. So I'm not naive enough to think that there won't be an element of challenge here, and we note that, and that's been very helpful. But it might be that we do have that there are external things that will work in our favour through advancements in technology and that type of development that will help hopefully manage this.
Thank you, Anthony. Just one of the comments that I wanted to put in was I myself drive a EV as well. And one of the challenges that we have is recently I've been forced to use public chargers whilst I have a change around in my home charger. I'm spending in the region of about 40 to 43 pounds just to drive for 100 and realistically to drive for 180 miles. Now the vehicle will tell me at the time of charging that it can do 250. As soon as you unplug and you start moving less than 200 meters, the first 50 or 60 miles have already dropped off. So I think this is, to be honest, I mean, to put it bluntly, it's daylight robbery. When EV chargers came in, we were promised that it's going to be all renewable energy, it's going to be cheap energy, and yet it's more expensive than oil. So unless these public chargers are not made cheap and they're not well, I suppose they're not able to compete with the oil prices of petrol and diesel, I can't really see how we're going to ask the general public to start moving on to EV chargers. Even the other issue that we have is a lot of these vehicles are now they're coming in with batteries that are 75 kilowatts plus. I mean, I think the highest one I've seen is 110 kilowatts. Now, to charge 110 kilowatts on your home charger which probably will run about 7 kilowatts, you're looking at least 12 to 15 hours charge. Now, that is unrealistic in terms of how the households are going to manage that. So I think a lot of the time these public chargers will still be in high demand, and therefore bringing in chargers that are ultra fast, i.e. over 150 kilowatts, and making them accessible is the way forward. If we're going to stick in more 7 kilowatt chargers as we have currently around on our streets, that's really not feasible. I mean, we're expecting vehicles to stay there for no more than 3 hours, I believe, which is the current control measure. In 3 hours, they're not really going to get that much of a charge in there. And then they'll be back again. So kind of like we've got these EV users in a bit of a loop here where the solution isn't being presented in the way that it needs to be presented. So I'm not sure how much influence you have in terms of the private charges, but it'll be really good to understand on how we as a council can actually influence any private charges that are already on other properties like the shop, the supermarkets, some of these courts. I mean, Luton itself doesn't even have a 150 kilowatt charger that is accessible for the public. I do believe the Hackney drivers do have about 5 or 6 ultra fast chargers, but otherwise, in terms of the general public, we don't even have a 150 kilowatt charger. The nearest one that we would have to go to is Dunstable or Hatton Regis. So there's quite a lot there, and the latest in terms of what you have presented is welcome. But I hope that you would actually put it forward that, in terms of Luton being a deprived area, being an area where we have a lot of people that are struggling with cost of living, and we are now bombarding them with EV charging charges, EV charging costs that are astronomically higher than what they would do if they had a diesel or a petrol vehicle. Thank you. In terms of coming back onto the recommendation, this report is going to go to the executive on the 26th of January. So I'm thinking you got plenty of feedback here from us today to go to the executive. So I'll be happy to note the meeting with the additional points that we were released. Thank you very much. That then brings us over to, thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much for your reports. That brings us over to the work program and the executive forward plan. Does anyone have any questions on the work program? Councillor Franks?
Only one. Chair, I noticed on the schedule for today's meeting, the food law enforcement report has been removed from this meeting. If Eunice could let us know which meeting it's going to end up on, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, that particular item, including the health and safety forward plan, is coming to the meeting of the 9th of April.
Thank you.
Councillor Begum?
Just kind of wanted to highlight that there seems to be quite a lot of items for February, but not a lot on March. Is it possible to spread them out a little bit?
The March meeting is the Crime and Disorder Committee meeting. So what we're doing is that I've had a conversation with the chair, and most of the items being moved from the 16th February meeting will go to the 9th of April and to the June meeting. That's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Sure. With regards to the item that was requested by Councillor Tom Shaw on procurement, that particular item is more relevant to the finance review group meeting. So I'm going to pass that on to that particular work program, if it's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.